Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of A God Shift. I'm your host, Shayna Davis. I know the last time you listened, I was Shayna Rattler, but I recently got married and I'm now Shayna Davis. But welcome to the show. And before we get started, I would love if you would do me a favor. So, wherever it is that you're listening to this episode, I want you to take a screenshot and post it on your social media. When you do that, I just want to hear your biggest aha moment or your biggest takeaway from this episode. And the reason why I do that, I don't care so much about downloads. The PR team does. I don't care so much about downloads. But what I know is that there are a lot of people out there that really want to do their part to uphold biblical values, and everybody doesn't know where to start. And so the more times that these episodes are shared, the more people that can be equipped with the tips and the tools and the strategies that we discuss here on the show. So thank you in advance for being willing to do that. I'm going to read my guest's bio, and we're going to get started for what I know is going to be a fabulous conversation. For those of you that are just listening to the audio, when I say your name, you're going to know that you're in for a treat. For those of you that are watching the video, I know you know her face, and the surprise has already been spoiled. Don't put it in the chat yet, though. All right, here we go. My guest today is an internationally known speaker and the New York Best Times selling author of several books. She co-hosts the podcast Conversations with John and Lisa Bevere. I think I just gave it away. She's a frequent guest on At Home with the Beveres and hosts the Fight for Female podcast. She co-founded Messenger International, which has given away more than 65 million resources, and launched Messenger X, a discipleship app that reaches 238 countries in 129 languages. She has empowered women for more than 40 years and has been featured everywhere that you can imagine that someone in media could be featured. I am so excited to welcome to the show Lisa Bevere.
Well, good morning. I'm so honored to be with you, and congratulations on your marriage.
Thank you. You are the first person that I've interviewed since I got married. I took a little bit of a break from recording, and I was concerned whether or not I was going to remember. I'm an older bride. I'm 46 being married for the first time. So I've been Rattler for a very long time, and I was concerned whether or not I was going to remember to say my new name. But thank God the Holy Spirit is better than me.
I'll give you grace. I won't think you don't value it. I'll think it's been 40 some years of saying the other one. So
46 years of waiting. So I have your new book here, Lisa.
Yeah.
You just released a brand new book. You've written many. All of your books have changed lives, especially women's lives. But this book here is called The Fight for Female, Reclaiming Our Divine Identity. And so our conversation today is really going to dig deep into the contents of the book. But I think a great place for you to start is just to give us a general overview of what the book is about and what prompted you to write it.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm honored to be with you. And I think this is such an incredibly important conversation. If you hear a lot of noise in the background, we have a rainstorm descending right now in Nashville. But Shauna, sorry, I just messed up. Shayna, I just realized that the very concept of female was under attack. I had such a wake up of like, wait a minute, I'm looking around and I'm seeing women, the very concept being sexualized by the culture and being silenced in the church. And I felt like silenced and sexualized was such a narrow road for women to walk. And I was like, how did we get to this space? What is going on? And I realized that this isn't so much a cultural issue. Yes, there is a cultural issue, but it goes way deeper. This is a spiritual attack against what women carry, what women represent, and how women partner with God. And I would even say how women partner with men. And so I just was like, whoa, I'm seeing things unfold. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the book, but I actually opened up with a dream that I'd had. In 2016, I dreamed that I entered a green room of women, and it was one of those strange things where you know the people in the room, but I don't remember any of them. I can't say, oh, you were in that room. But I walk into this room and I noticed all the women were holding something close to their chest. And when I leaned in, I realized they were all carrying different rainbow colored baby dragons dressed in children's clothing. 2016, that was such a bizarre concept. I was like, what is going on here? So I went from woman to woman. I said, well, do you understand you're holding a dragon? And they just shook their heads. They're like, she doesn't get it. These are the wise, kind dragons. I'm like, no, there is no such thing. And near the end of the dream, a woman takes her dragon she's holding and she tries to get me to hold the dragon. And I still remember it had this ridiculous ruffle around its neck. And in my dream, I reached out, grabbed the dragon by the neck and broke its neck. And I woke up and I'm on my back and my arms are flying through the air. And I was like, what just happened? Typed out the whole dream. And again, 2016, send it to somebody. I was like, do you have anything? They're like, we don't have anything. I was like, okay, because that was a bizarre dream. And it came from my sleep into my physical realm. So I'm paying attention to it. I can still see the dream. So I'd written it out. And then I start to see what's happening. I start to see women partnering with the loss of voice for women. I start to see women. I mean, this is what shocked me. Women saying, yeah, I'm okay with sharing our bathroom with men. I started seeing women saying men can come into the locker room with my daughter. And if a 55-year-old man identifies as a 15-year-old girl, he can be on the swimming team with my 15-year-old daughter. He can strip down. And I mean, I'm watching this and it's like there were scales over the women's eyes. And I'm like, do you understand? Do you understand what you're partnering with? And it's so crazy. When I first started to say something, I thought women would say, thank you. But instead they were like, you're being mean. Women, we can be inclusive. We can be honoring. And I'm like, this is about a divine entrustment from God. And we do not share the name that God gave us through Adam, but God gave us. Woman is our creation name. It is not something that can be shared.
Yeah.
And Shayna, I just kept, seeing this happen. And then I had to go back and say, where have we partnered with lies? Where have we agreed that to be a woman is something less? Because whenever a woman says, oh, I think it's powerful to be a boss babe, but the boss babe acts like a man, then we have to say, well, have you listened to the lies that say to be a powerful woman, you need to act like a man?
Yeah.
Because I want to be a powerful woman who knows how to act like a woman.
Absolutely. The Lord gave me an assignment in September of last year. He seems to speak to me about assignments in September. And
It's the Jewish New Year. Yeah.
absolutely, I do believe that it's connected to that time of year for sure. I believe that oftentimes what we're called to be part of the solution are those things that we complain about, the things that we wish we could change because we're really intended to be part of the solution. And last September, and for the sake of the recording, that was September of 2023, the Lord said, I'm calling you to raise up an army of women that is going to recover and restore what is out of place. Because as much as we've been under attack, I also believe that all through the Bible, it shows in pivotal moments that women were used. And I believe that women will be used to help recover and restore what is under attack. You talk about just the mere concept of female being under attack. And I feel like everywhere I look around me, especially over the last, 2 to 3 years, it seems that anything that has a biblical basis is under attack. And so I'm curious if a woman is listening to this episode, and I know a lot of the women that follow me because they want to be equipped to be able to take a stand for the values that they believe in. How does your book help them discern and uphold everything that is under the attack, not just the mere fact that they're a woman, but just biblical values in general?
Well, it was really important for me to take it all the way back to the principle, the entrustment, the origin, and then to move it forward. So we have the origin of woman, and she is an answer. She is not an afterthought. She is not a problem to be controlled. She is not something to be held down. She was an answer to be embraced. So we have the woman coming on the scene. And in the Hebrew, it was Ish and Isha. They were so closely related. Their names sounded the same. I like to describe it as they were two sides of the same coin. So when now I'm not a coin collector, but I do know enough that if I had let's say an American Eagle coin or whatever it is, golden eagle, and I took it into a coin shop, and if the side that was the eagle was in perfect shape, and then you flipped it over, and the woman, the Lady Liberty, if she was all scratched and marked, it would actually devalue the entire coin. So you cannot devalue women without devaluing men. Male and female, we are woven together to be a power union. Women is not an afterthought. She is a necessity. And what has happened is, in so many ways and on so many fronts, we have forgotten what it means to bring the voice of a woman into the situation. So when I look at the book of Proverbs, you see the first 8 chapters representing wisdom as a woman. As a woman, she opens her mouth with wisdom and kindness. So she has this voice of wisdom, insight, kindness, I would say intuition, and all of these things that they're not limited to women, but they're highlighted in women. And so we see this beginning where God says, I'm going to put enmity. He's talking to the serpent. I'm going to put enmity between you and the woman. Well, I don't know if you've had this experience, but I will ask my audience, when God put enmity between the woman and the serpent, whose side did he put the woman on? And the audience will just go blank. And I'll say, okay, all right, let me help you. There's 2 sides. There's 2 sides. There's the serpent, bad. And then there's the other side, which is God, which is good, because God is the only one good. There's no one good but God. That's what Jesus said. So I said there's 2 sides. So when God said, I'm putting enmity between you and the serpent, he put the woman on his side. And we know that's true. And it's, again, not that God's choosing sides, but he said, I'm going to partner with the woman. Her seed is going to crush the serpent's head. So he was talking about Jesus, the seed of woman crushing the serpent's head. So that was that specific. But then we look at the book of Revelation and you see a dragon and a woman. And this woman is specifically Mary giving birth to Jesus, but it becomes the church. It becomes the church because it says the enemy was furious with the woman and went to make war with her children, those that kept the testimony of Jesus Christ and kept his commandments. And so obviously that's not talking about Israel. That's talking about the church, because right now Israel does not hold to the testimony of Jesus Christ. That doesn't mean they won't, but right now they don't. And that's something we should all be praying for. But so we see this battle that has grown in scale and influence. And the enemy is always going to tempt us to grasp at something that we already have. I mean, when he came to Adam and Eve and said, oh, if you eat the fruit, God's going to be mad because then you're going to be like him and you're going to know the difference between good and evil. Well, they already had the knowledge of God, which is a higher level than good and evil. And so now we've got a generation grasping at the image of God and saying, no, I don't want what's been entrusted to my feminine nature. I want the man's nature. I want his position. And we have men, they are so purposeless. And, so many people are like, but men have oppressed women. Absolutely. Absolutely. Here's the problem. When you've been an oppressor for so long, it is not surprising that you yourself become depressed. And so when you oppress, because it's never the purpose to ever oppress anybody. It's never been the purpose for men to oppress women. So of course, now when you've oppressed, what God said, I'm going to add to your life to multiply, then you will be depressed because your labor, your function, your purpose, your legacy is compromised. So now women have said, you've oppressed us, we're going to oppress you now. And that is never a God response. God created woman as the answer to the very first problem. And the very first problem before there was even a fall was, it is not good that man be alone. But women have bought into the lie of the feminists that if we wanted to be powerful women, we needed to act like men. And now men are alone and men are in a position that is not good. And neither are we.
And it's really unfortunate. I say all the time, back to this assignment, when Lord, I was like, what does that even mean? An army of women that's going to recover and restore out of place. And I created this training, if you will, and I was calling these women Kingdom Trailblazers. I didn't create that name. It's been out there for a while. And when I get interviewed, people ask me, like, well, how do you become a Kingdom Trailblazer? And I said, well, before we get there, we have to remember that it's so easy to get sidetracked.
Yes.
This righteous indignation. It's so easy to get sidetracked by why we're standing up for what we're standing up for, that we forget that if we don't balance the truth of what is going on with
Mm.
love and grace, that all we're going to do is just cause more division. And I hear that in what you're saying, that it's like, listen, this is not a time to fight back in a way that causes more division than is already there, because then you have the original problem and a new problem, and they all just continue.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's what Jesus did such a great job of. He wasn't nice. He wasn't always, the gentleman, but he made sure that he always balanced the truth with love. He made sure that he always balanced the truth with grace, because he was like, listen, I can't afford to cause more division than what is already there.
Absolutely. And I think you captured that beautifully. When we do not recognize our identity as an answer, as a God woven answer, then we create problems. And so if I see myself as an answer, and what I wanted to do with the women was take them back. Like, do you understand you have a sacred entrustment? Do
Yeah.
you understand that God said, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you the heart of your husband. I'm going to trust you with the heart of your community. I'm going to trust you with the heart of your, there's no greater privilege or noble commission than the entrustment of a heart. You know that.
Yeah.
You know that. And you and I don't know what your history with men has been, but I can tell you my history with men and women. I have been hurt by men, but I have been wounded by women, because I opened up my heart and I said, here, I'm going to show you. And women can connect intimately, which means we can either wound intimately or we can heal intimately. And you brought up a point about we do not need to add. We do not need to say, well, this has been here, so I'm going to do. What we need is we fight by flourishing. And
Yeah.
what we need to do is say, I'm going to give you, I'm going to give myself full permission to be everything God created us, created you and I to be. I had a fascinating conversation with he's a psychologist, psychoanalyst, statistician, brilliant professor, an expert in totalitarianism out of Belgium. Okay. And he was telling me how totalitarianism gains its hold in a country by chaos.
Yep.
That the more violence, the more protesting, the more justification for massive control. And so, I'm listening to him and I'm like, how do we find a solution to this? And he said to me, and it was just so beautiful because he's not even a Christian. He said to me, how we fight this is courageous, consistent conversations.
Yeah.
And I thought, wait a minute, that's how the early church started, from
That's right.
house to house. They spoke about God. They got together on the weekend, but they had courageous, Christ-like conversations during the week. And and that's why I love about that you're doing a podcast. You're actually inviting people into courageous, consistent conversations. I feel like we looked at a world back in 2015. If we could go back and look at it, our world was not as divided. It was not as divided as it is right now. I mean, we are dividing over things that people have no control over. We have no control over the gender that we are in. I know a lot of people think they can, but like we cannot be angry at men because they're born men. We cannot be angry at women because they're born. I mean, it's just, we have no control. All we have control over is our choice to respond to people. And Jesus is so clear that he is asking us to be peacemakers, not peacekeepers. And peacekeepers compromise and peacemakers confront. Now, confronting doesn't mean arguing with people on social media while you're sitting on the toilet. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about this. We're talking about respect.
Yeah.
respecting with people that look different, think different, vote different, but we have conversations where people are heard and that we're heard. Like it's both, because right now I feel like we've had one side screaming, and then the other side takes a turn, it screams, and then the other side, and we're not moving that forward. My husband and I, when we would have fights, we are both so Italian. We would be thinking, like he's talking and I'm thinking of my counter argument. I am not even listening to what he is saying. I'm formulating this. I'm going to pull this out of my memory bank. And it didn't change until I made myself, and he made himself repeat what the other person said. You have to listen to learn, not listen to win a fight. And right now, I feel like everybody's listening to win a fight. And the women right now need to remember that the man is not our problem.
Right.
The serpent is. And Adam and Eve should have followed Jesus' example. And we have a choice now. Are we going to say it is written, or are we going to point our fingers at the Pharisees? I mean, Jesus ultimately, he shows that, yes, the Pharisees, they were of their father, the devil. I mean, we need to realize that there's only two families, the family of God and the family of the devil. And there's no nice family in the middle trying to find their way. There is two families. And everybody is created in the image of God, but not everybody has the nature of God. You do not have the nature of God until you're born again. And so right now, we women have a divine assignment that we have relegated to not value it. We don't value motherhood. We do not value voice. We do not value influence. And yet I see full permission to do and be everything that God creates us to be when you look at not just the New Testament, but the Old Testament as well.
That's exactly what I want to talk about next. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the ways that women can begin to put all this together. We'll be right back.
God is commissioning women leaders to uphold Christian values and change the course of history for his glory, and to mobilize other women to blaze the same trail. Want to know what type of kingdom leader you are and learn specific strategies to impact change based on your type? Find out by going to kingdomtrailblazerquiz.com right now.
All right, welcome back. So we have Lisa Bevere here. She's discussing her new book, The Fight for Female, Reclaiming Our Divine Identity. And so, Lisa, before the break, we were talking about, well, a number of things, but specifically one of the last things that we were talking about is our identity as women, the identity that God has given, what he's been given us the ability to do. And you started to talk about motherhood and some of the other multitude of roles that we play. And so when we think about our sense of purpose and the identity that God has given us and the biblical values that drive what it is that we're doing, what are some of the practical ways that women can apply how they were made and who they were made to be? I love that you said that we fight by flourishing. What are some practical ways that we can apply who we are and what we believe to areas like marriage, motherhood, and where we work?
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. When I was writing this book, I encountered something that in all of my years of Bible study, I'd never even noticed before. And maybe you've seen it. It astounded me. I was listening to a Jewish man, and he said that the heroes of Exodus are all women. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. What's he talking about? And he talks about, now this is so fascinating. The first heroes we know are the midwives. And we usually say the Hebrew midwives, but he actually said he said there's more evidence that they were Egyptian midwives, because he said Pharaoh would not have called the Hebrew people in and said, kill your own people. And he said, because the next pattern was he called the Egyptians in and said, kill the Israelite children. So he said, he calls in the Egyptian midwives and says, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to kill the boys. And it said because they feared Elohim, not Yahweh, because they feared Elohim. They did not kill the children. And so here we've got this dynamic where they're rescuing the children. He calls them back. He's like, what have you done? And they're like, oh, well, the Hebrew women, they're not like the Egyptian women. They give birth really fast. So they obviously had access to, the different women. So then we've got Moses's mother. Moses's mother chooses to rescue her son. It wasn't like an angel appeared, a prophet didn't show up at her house. It said that she saw something on him. Okay, we look at the midwives. These are women who are skillful in an area. Then we look at the Hebrew midwives. The Hebrew midwife is skillful. Then we look at the mother, and she has heart for her child. She sees something, and she hides him away. Then we have his sister, who strategically takes this ark that the mother has built, and she positions Moses near Pharaoh's daughter. And then we've got Pharaoh's daughter, who knew her father had said, kill all the Hebrew children. And yet she's like, nope, I'm going to save this child. I'm going to pay his mother to nurse him. So all of these women, so a woman of influence, a related woman, a woman of just a skill, like the Hebrew, and then a mother, just a mother. Some of us can fall into any of those categories. We can connect people with a situation that solves their needs. Each and every one of us has something that we can do. We can be a woman who chooses to notice and rescue. Because really, that is what Moses's mother did. She said, I see something on this child. There is such power when people feel seen.
Yeah.
When I have the privilege of going and ministering, and it is a privilege, and I do not take it for granted, I always, whenever, unless I've got to run out the door and catch a flight, I always am intentional to see people. Because I can get up on a stage and I can perform. But when I see people, then I have sealed what God has done. And too many women, they want the performance part, but they don't want the sealing of God's Holy Spirit, of a relational connection, of a personal connection. And I know that we can't do that for everybody or everything, but we can do what we can see. And so everybody is waiting for that moment and missing the everyday extraordinary opportunities for obedience. Yesterday I just had something happen that it actually brought tears to my eyes. I was in Nordstrom Rack. It had just opened. I have a grandson who turns 15 today. And do you know how hard it is to shop for a teenage boy? So I'm like taking pictures of the shoes and like, will he wear these? His mom's like, no. And so I'm in the shoe department. I'm trying to find something worthy of a 15-year-old. And I start coughing. I have this horrible, horrible coughing fit. And I can tell all the people are like, do you have COVID? I'm like, and so I go to the end, like where you can try their shoes on. I'm sitting there and I'm like coughing. And I had noticed this little Hispanic man, and he's probably grandfather age, and he's organizing the shoes. And, I had noticed him and I had spoke to him on purpose. I thought, this probably wasn't his dream job, organizing shoes. Yeah. And yet he's here and he's got a great attitude. And so I noticed him, I spoke to him, and I sat down and I'm coughing. All of a sudden he comes around the corner and he had bought me a bottle, like a sparkling water. And he said, maybe this will help you. And it touched my heart, but it also reminded me that you can do things that are priceless and they aren't necessarily costly, but you have to have your eyes open to see. So when I wrote the book, I began it with the dragon dream, but I ended up with how we fight the dragon is with the do. And so many people are saying, well, if I have a podcast like you, then I would have something. No, you actually can measure exactly what you would do as a leader by what you're doing with what you have right now.
That's right.
People say, well, I'd give a lot of money if I had a lot of money. No, you know exactly what you would do with money by looking at what you have right now. I remember the first time I heard about children dying in Africa. I actually was nursing. I was nursing my third son. The remote control was done, and I'm seeing starving babies. I thought, I don't want to see starving babies while I'm nursing my baby. I don't want to. And I couldn't turn it. And I watched a child die in its mother's arm. And I was like, what in the world? And I realized I thought I was poor. But in that moment, I realized compared to her, I was rich. And I looked at my son, I was like, my second son, I was like, you are going to start like, we're reusing push-ups, like pull-ups. You are going to potty train. I'm giving $25 a month. Then the 25 became 50, then the 50 became 100, then the 100 became, 250, then the 250 became 500, then the 500 became 1,000, because God said, all right, I'm going to trust you because you gave what was much when it was little, and a lot of times people think, well, I'd give a lot when I had a lot, but again, we don't understand. So we fight by doing. And then again, conversations. I have a neighbor here, and I don't walk around saying I write books at all. And my neighbor is so sweet. I have a little garden outside, and I hire her daughter to water my plants when I'm gone for an extended period of time. And so I brought over the money, and she said, hey, I just discovered you on Instagram. I was like, oh no. And she said,
You flew under the radar as long as you could.
I did. I said, yeah. And she said, well, I'm probably more liberal than you. And I said, oh, that's okay. And she said, but I need someone to talk to.
Mm.
See, we've been arguing with strangers online instead of having conversations. And she said, could we ever talk? And I said, absolutely. Like, do you know how we've lost the art of conversation?
Yeah.
We don't talk. We blame. We say one person talks and the other person shuts up. Like that doesn't work. I don't know. I've been married 42 years, October 2nd. That does not work. And if it doesn't work in a marriage, it's not going to work outside of a marriage, because in a marriage, you're at the highest level of covenant, and outside I can walk away. So if I cannot have voice and I do not feel heard, I will walk away. But if I can hear and be heard, then I build, even if we disagree. And that, I think, is what we're forgetting, is we need to have the right to disagree with one another and grow from that.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, Lisa, I wanted just to highlight something that you said, and I say this all the time, that for many of us, it's not about creating something new. When these women come to me like, I want to be a trailblazer, I'm like, listen, you're not coming to me to learn how to create a business. You're not coming to me to learn how to create a platform, and you don't even need one. It's about how we dominate in our sphere of influence and authority that we already have. Because, like you said, everyone is not writing books and having podcasts like you and I have been privileged to do. However, we all have influence and authority somewhere, whether it's in our home, somewhere in our community, on our job. And I love what you said, steward what you have in your hands now. Do something with what it is that you have now, because I can almost guarantee you that assistance is needed in some capacity where you are now. Why worry about creating something new and looking for new ways and new places to use your influence and authority when you can use with what God has already put in your hands right now? Like, that's where we start. And I hope that that's what people hear, is that you don't have to have something great in order to do something great, but we can steward what God has already given us.
Yeah, you put it so well. And I do feel like I always hear it. I'm like, mothers are like, I want to go on a missions trip. I'm like, your children are your mission.
That's right.
Now, it doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you have to understand what's in front of you right now is more important.
Yeah, don't step over that in order to get to something else.
Absolutely. And I get that the mundane can feel really difficult. But yeah, women are being attacked because they're a threat.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this will be offensive to you, but I even had such a sense when there started to be the division based on race. I was like, God wants to pour out his spirit, and now we are making it about flesh.
And
Like
it's so dumb.
and I'm like, we God is saying, I want to pour out my spirit on every tribe, every race, every tongue. And we're like, well, no, God, not them.
Yeah.
We don't like what their great grandparents did, so not them. Or no, God, not them, because I don't have, I mean, this is what I love. In the book of Acts, it says, in the last days, God says, and right there, it just says, I'm not going to actually consult all of you. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pour my spirit on all flesh, which means he's going to pour it on people that you and I don't think he should pour it out on.
That's
He's
right.
going to pour it out in ways. And I believe the LGBTQ community, the alphabet people, are the harvest that is going to come in, because they've been promised things by the enemy that would make them whole. And they're going to find out, no, I don't feel wholeness in promiscuity or changing my gender or whatever he said would bring their wholeness. And we in the church, we are still so divided.
Yeah.
But you and I both know women are the connectors. So we need to begin to connect the body of Christ in relationship, and we need to fight for the family. If we're going to be divided about anything else, we need to be united about the protection of the children, the generations in front of us, and the sanctity of life and the image of God. These are things that we cannot compromise on as far as people of God.
Yeah, bottom line. Well, we're out of time. So, Lisa, if you can, I know you are such a wealth of knowledge and people are going to want more, and I know you have more. And so, if they want to follow you on social media, where's the best place to find you on social media?
Well, I think Instagram. I have X, I have Facebook. I don't even know how to get into my Facebook. I have Instagram, and then I actually have a podcast. And we find that Instagram is the short clips, and then the podcast is where we can actually unpack things. And then anywhere on Amazon they can get our books. We feel like we are so gifted by God to have the privilege of writing and having someone edit our thoughts, which is really helpful. And so it's kind of like you turn it in this way, and they're like, let's help you make sense with this. Yeah. And so writing, so our resources, and Messenger X is an app that we have in 130 languages now, and it has our courses and audiobooks, so many of them free of charge in 130 languages.
And if they want to go straight to Fight for Female, I think it's front and center at lisabevere.com, is it not?
It is. It is. Thank you for saying that.
Well, I am going to make sure that the links to all of that is in the show notes. So all that people have to do is click it and they can go straight to it. Thank you so much for being here. This episode is going to drop soon. I know it's going to be a hit, and I pray blessings over you and this book. And I'm just excited to see women be awakened. I think that we have been lulled to sleep by the chaos. And I think some of us have thought if we just put our head in the sands, maybe when we emerge, things will be better. And so I just know that this book is going to awaken women. And I'm excited to see how they stand up as a result of this and recover and restore what is out of place, because God promised me that that's what was going to happen. So everyone share this episode far and wide, especially with every woman that women leaders that we need to be filled up. We're constantly pouring out into other people. And this is a great episode to pour back into the women of your lives. So everyone, thank you for being here today. I pray that you will go back and listen to future and recent episodes as well. Everyone have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you for the honor.